Howdy, y'all. This is Jerome and Diaz with My Construction Education, a Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners approved provider, plumbing school here for all your plumbing needs, everything from apprentice to plumbing inspectors and everybody that's needing and wanting to get their license here in the great state of Texas. And as a plumbing school, we run across quite a few questions and we try our best to figure out those questions and get you answers in our classes. And one that has come up, not just in class but also out of our office, has been from our apprentice. So, what options do I have? Options. Your options are be an apprentice and get your plumbing license. But you do have options. You do have options. And those options are endorsements. Believe it or not, there are endorsements that are available for a plumber's apprentice here in Texas. And one of those endorsements you can actually pick up from the very beginning when you've got your fingerprints taken care of, you got your apprenticeship card, and it's like, now I'd like to get that first endorsement. So let's dive right in. Pull this up here for y'all. We'll get to the state board's website, and we're going to go over to license types. And we've got license types. Obviously, we're looking to talk about plumber's apprentice here in Texas. There's the red card, apprentice registration. And here on, I don't believe this is something that we had spent one of our episodes going and talking about how to become a plumber's apprentice. So if you get a chance and have not yet checked out that episode, please go check that out. And we're going to scroll through the set of information. And here you go, folks. Right here at the very bottom, you can find them yourself as well. It says possible endorsements. Plumber's apprentice who meets the eligibility requirements may obtain a drain cleaner restrict registration, a drain cleaner registration, or an RUI, residential utilities installer registration. And it says click here for more information on these registrations. So the other registrations, or as I like to call them, endorsements that you can pick up under your apprentice, just like endorsements that you could pick up as a journeyman, as a master plumber, or even a plumbing inspector, those endorsements for those are different. We'll have an episode on that. But this particular session, we want to spend some time for y'all apprentice, up and coming apprentice. So as mentioned before, you've got three endorsements, three registrations that you can pick up as you go through your career as an apprentice. You get the drain cleaner restricted registrant. That's that first one that you can get. And we'll talk about the requirements. Then you have the RUI. If we follow this in succession, then it would be the residential utility installers. Get that one at 2,000 hours, so about a year's time. And then you've got the drain cleaner registrant, removing the restrict. That would be at about 4,000 hours. And it says the drain cleaner registration may also be added to your tradesman plumber license. And we'll talk a bit more on that. If we don't do it during this session, we'll probably do so in our tradesman. That's a pretty important one. I'm glad that the state has mentioned that on their website. Eligibility requirements. So here you go. If I want to obtain this drain cleaner restricted registration, you may register it as a drain cleaner restricted registrant if you are currently registered as a plumber's apprentice here in Texas and you receive a passing score on your verification training affidavit. So you can see here right away that I could pick up with very little, if not any time required on my plumber's apprentice. I just got this thing and company is saying, man, if you had a drain cleaner, we could put you out, get you trained up, and have you go out and help us cable out some lines, run a jetter, run a cable machine, get you trained, get you out in a vehicle working with one of our service techs, or hey, chances are, as you continue to gain your skill, you can be one of our service techs going out and doing some drain cleaning. It can be quite lucrative working under a RMP, Responsible Master Plumber, and his or her company. So that's pretty cool. So you can pick that up just right out the gate as you have your fingerprints done. You've got your apprenticeship card, and adding this very first endorsement. We'll touch on a bit more. What can you do? What can you do with these endorsements? First off, with the drain cleaner restricted registrant. So we'll do that here in just a bit. What's the next endorsement? Well, I want to do it in succession. So the next one, which would be at 2,000 hours, would be this residential utility installer, RUI. You may register as a residential utility installer if you are currently a plumber's apprentice here in Texas. You have, just as mentioned before, at least 2,000 hours. Got to have 2,000 hours working in the plumbing trade as a plumber's apprentice. In other words, you've been doing what is required, amongst other things that you've been trained on while working with your plumbing company. It might be under that RMP, it might be under a journeyman, a tradesman. So you're working with a licensed plumber, and during that time, you've spent some time possibly putting in some sewer lines, maybe putting in some utility, putting in some water lines, might even be putting some gas lines in. So you've gotten some exposure, and it's been during that year's time. The other thing is you have to receive a passing score on your training affidavit. And we'll talk a bit more on something that has recently changed that meets the requirement, the training requirements for this particular item that is saying that training affidavit. Then next endorsement that can be obtained is the drain cleaner. Drain cleaner, if you're currently registered, you can get that drain cleaner. You as well need to have the OJT. Got to have at least 2 years under your belt, so 4,000 hours working in the plumbing trade as a drain cleaner restricted registrant to pick up the drain cleaner. So we're removing the restrict, and now I can do some things that I am no longer restricted from doing after 2 years of working out in the field. And then it also talks about the passing score on your training affidavit. So let's touch on this one because we tend to see that here on pretty much all of the endorsements. They talk about this training affidavit on all three endorsements. What recently has changed, and this is something that our school offers as a credit course as an approved provider, is what's called a 6-hour apprentice continuing ed. So now what is required is that you have meet a training requirement. And that training requirement would be that course that I just mentioned, which is that 6-hour apprentice continuing ed course. And we do offer it. Welcome to check out our website, see when we have that scheduled. And we'd be happy. Just call us and say, okay, what do I need to do to get these endorsements? I heard something here that you mentioned that I need to attend a training to satisfy this. So this is something that will start to be removed, and what will take its place will be that 6-hour apprentice continuing ed. So with that certificate, with that course, as you go through, and let's say that you want to get this drain cleaner restrict, then you take that training course with us, that 6-hour apprentice continuing ed, and that would satisfy the training requirement. You have that course, you fill out the application, and you're able to add that endorsement. Another factor that could happen is when you get that RUI. You get that RUI, you meet the training hours requirement, and along with your OJT, the training course would be that same course that you took earlier. So you can actually use that certificate multiple times as you go through with the appropriate amount of OJT. The other is the drain cleaner. Drain cleaner, as we mentioned earlier, is about 2 years in the making. So at 2 years, you can pick up at 4,000 hours. So that's your 2 years. With that same certificate that you had potentially picked up when you were a drain cleaner restrict, you can use that certificate yet again for the training requirements. If I'm going a little too fast, or this is information you're thinking, I need to sit down and get some counseling, more than welcome to call us. And we've got our website here posted here on our channel. Give us a call. Free counseling, whether you're going to take the class with us or whether you just need some direction. We provide free counseling, and we'd be happy to visit with you to lay out these pathways. And that's exactly what we're doing here is taking one of our first steps and looks for our apprentice. And this is right here on the state's website for the taking. Obviously, you have to do the work. You've got to do the on-job training. But the next thing is just ask the questions. And sometimes we just don't know what to ask. That's what we're here for with my construction education with my CE. Let's now talk about what can you do with these endorsements. So we get now to the scope of work that is permitted for a drain cleaner restricted registry. So as it states here, and you can read it for yourself, we'll just kind of do a synopsis. So a plumber's apprentice who holds a drain cleaner restricted registrant may clear obstructions in building drains, sewers, and the key term is through an existing code approved opening. Now you're under the general, notice the term here that we see, general supervision, and this is where it gets very interesting for an apprentice. The general supervision of a responsible master plumber. In other words, you've got the training, you've got the confidence. The plumbing company you're working for says, we need you to go out here and cable out this line. It may be residential, it may be commercial. Going through an existing opening, what would that be? That existing opening could be an available cleanout. Maybe it's in the back of a restaurant, back of a home, or it could be a VTR, vent through the roof. Some companies say that's allowable. We've got you trained up. We know you know from your training what would be the safe manner to get up on that roof and to do so. Could be through a fixture. Now, that a restriction port is I cannot remove anything if I am a drain cleaner restrict by rule, by plumbing rule here in Texas. I can't remove anything. So I can't remove a P trap. I couldn't remove a water closet to go through that flange in that drain portion if I got to go a little bit further than that water closet to make my way out because I just don't have a clean out. So removing things is where I am restricted from doing things. But the key term, let's go back to this key term is general supervision of an RMP, of a responsible master plumber. In other words, I'm not being directly supervised, I'm being generally supervised. In other words, I'm being allowed to go out and perform these tasks with the general supervision. They may be somewhere else at the office. They may be from checking in on my project and going over to possibly set up another project for scheduling. So I'm being generally supervised, but not directly supervised. In other words, that RMP, that plumber, doesn't have to be there because these particular projects, drain cleaning, without removing anything, I'm going through an existing opening, I'm able to do. I'm able to perform that. So that is pretty awesome. That is pretty cool. Um, that this allowance is being given, this responsibility, let me put it that way, is being given to an apprentice with this endorsement. The next one, and I'm going in that order, would be the residential utility installer. So, what is a residential utility installer able to do? Well, as it explains in here, you got your plumber's apprentice who holds an RUI, residential utility installer registration, may construct and install yard and service piping and building sewers for one and two family dwellings under, there's that key term again, the general supervision of an RMP, responsible master plumber. All other plumbing work performed by an RUI must be performed under the direct supervision. So we see those terms and how they're important on how and what needs to happen on the job. An RUI may not install piping for gas service or supervised plumber's apprentice. So what we have here is a plumber's apprentice that's able to go out and perform these duties with their apprenticeship card, with this registration, with this endorsement, we'll call it that, on their apprenticeship at 2,000 hours. So they got 1 year under their belt. And okay, they've gotten some exposure, they've gotten some training, and they're familiar with sewer lines. They're familiar with water lines on a residential type setting, residential project. And with this endorsement, with this registration, these individuals, these apprentices, are able to go out and perform those projects, put in sewer lines, yard lines. That's what we call them, utility lines that would go from, say, the back of a building, residential, single and two family dwelling, one or two family dwelling, from the back of that home all the way over to, say, where the tap is or just before the property line. Now, if we get into taps, usually that's just a thing that I would say we need to check with our local AHJ to make sure where are we allowed and where are we to say stop. And a lot of that is in that permitting process. That is where the general supervision comes in, because that RMP is not only the one that is securing the projects, overseeing the projects, but they're providing that general supervision. May not be on the job, but periodically they're checking in. Periodically, they're either starting from the beginning, intermediate, at the very end, or they may be just periodically there on that job. So depending on how that project is structured and what is required, it may be it's just that's still working side by side with that apprentice, but there's a little bit more wiggle room that this apprentice is able to perform those tasks. Yet another cool item for apprentice, and being able to embark and start working towards that sense of responsibility and a little bit of solo work, and that's where that pride tends to come in. I would say, if anything, it does start to come in to say, I did that. I was able to perform that task. So that's where I had that. Man, it is so awesome to be able to do this at such a young stage and phase in your career as a plumber in our industry. And that's where I say it is also a huge responsibility. But with this state certification, with this registration, has that potential of allowance under the plumbing rule here in the state of Texas. Next, we have the drain cleaner. Drain cleaner is a plumber's apprentice or a tradesman who holds the drain cleaner registration. They may install, the restrict is now removed, allowing these individuals with this registration to be able to install cleanouts and remove and reset P traps for the purposes of eliminating obstructions in, say, building drains and sewers. Now, they are also under the general supervision of an RMP, and all other plumbing work performed by the apprentice with a drain cleaner registration may be performed under the direct supervision. So it's not to say, well, I can't do those things. No, under the direct supervision of a licensee. So if I'm out on a commercial job and we're having to set fixtures, we're having to do new construction on a commercial job or residential for that matter. Just because my apprentice with these endorsements, registrations does not allow me, well, I need to just be directly supervised, have that appropriate license for that residential or that commercial project to be able to do those things. So it's not stopping you from being able to do gas or set fixtures or do rough ins, top outs. No, we just need to be directly supervised as an apprentice. All other plumbing work performed by a tradesman with a drain cleaner registration must be performed under the direct supervision of a licensee unless the work is for a one or two family dwellings. And what they're inserting here is they're clearly stating, and this will be another episode that we'll have for y'all, is what can a tradesman do? Tradesman is a limited residential license. And as it clearly states here, it's for one or two family dwellings. That tradesman license is pretty cool too. First step into having that professional license, yes, it's a residential license, but it's a plumbing license. And with this allowance, individuals can go out and perform plumbing under the general supervision of a RMP. In other words, they're working on single, two family dwellings, and they're under the general supervision. Able to go out and perform plumbing as necessary, both on service and residential, new construction. But as we're seeing here, there's certain parameters that may fall into a different direction where I've got to be direct supervised when it comes to commercial. Doesn't mean that tradesman cannot perform those things. They just need to have that commercial plumbing license that is providing direct supervision. What's really unique and what we hear in this one piece of why would, and this is something that comes up in our continuing ed classes, why would I want to have as a tradesman, why would I want to have the drain cleaner registration attached to it? Well, it goes back to what we just finished stating. If with my license as a tradesman, I can work on 1 and 2 family residential dwellings, with the drain cleaner, having this registration attached to my tradesman license allows me to be able to go and be generally supervised. In other words, I don't have to have a licensed plumber commercial out on those drain cleaning projects if it's a commercial, if it's a commercial project. So if it's a burger house, a chicken house, whatever it may be, that restaurant that we're using as an example, whatever that commercial establishment may be, I'm able to do those tasks and clear those obstructions on my jetter, cable machine, run a camera, diagnostics. I can do those things with that drain cleaner. It allows me to be able to legally perform those tasks and just be generally supervised. Now, if it goes to another level where we find out in our running our camera that grease trap needs to be replaced, maybe it's a couple of floor sinks are melted with the piping that's going to and from there, then estimator comes in. Maybe that's us. Estimator comes in and says we need to replace those lines. No problem. I can put those in. I'll be directly supervised. We bust up the concrete, replace those lines. I've got a journeyman out there on the project. That journeyman, he or she can oversee and provide that direct supervision as I'm the apprentice assisting that journeyman. Could be the master of the company could be out there as well, providing that direct supervision as I'm the apprentice and helping assist on now doing some repipe. Here towards the bottom portion, we have how to apply for these registrations. And check these out. You get a chance, check out the same link, the same tab that we've gone through. It goes on to state that to obtain a registration, you must submit a completed application. And that training affidavit, as we mentioned, is now being replaced by the 6-hour apprentice continuing ed. So keep that in mind. And the 18-hour fee for the State Board of Plumbing Examiners. Applicants for the drain cleaner and the RUI must also submit an employer certification form. So, in other words, do you have the hours? And this also starts to put into place the series of events that will get you closer and closer to your plumbing license. You've got to show evidence of those hours, and this is a great way to start that process. And you just get in your portal account the same way that you set up your apprenticeship, the same way that from here on out, renewing your license, renewing anything that you may have, or applying for anything, you're going to do that in your one-stop shop there in the portal. And that's also where you can upload your hours, and that's with this employer certification form. You've got the applications. Before we move on to applications, do keep in mind that if you need to submit any additional paperwork due to being convicted of a felony, you answer that question. It is what it is. Go through the process. I will tell you that it's well worth it. Sometimes we may not hear or like what we hear, but all we can do is just let the state board and let the staff go and review your process. I will tell you in all fairness, and I know this is just my situation, your situation, but that's what it's about. It's about the individual. Let the staff down at the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners review your situation, get this paperwork in front of them, and just go through the process, no matter what the circumstances of your criminal history, if that be the case. You got your applications, check those out. There's that employer certification form, and we'll just see what we get on request if these would be some episodes that we may want to start posting for our apprentice in those startups. Your fees, you have that here towards the bottom. And so your fees that you have for registration, so that's your apprenticeship, is going to be 18. A renewal for your apprenticeship is going to be 18. And so for each one of these endorsements, from what we have here in registrations, let's see, these fees are the same for all. There we go. So for each one of those registrations, now thankfully, when you're a drain cleaner restrict and then you remove the restrict by application, then that doesn't mean you have to carry both of those. So pretty much it's going from drain cleaner restrict. If you start in series, drain cleaner restrict, you put in your application, you put in the training requirement. Next up, at a year later, is the RUI, residential utility installer. Same thing's happening there. What would happen at that phase is now, yes, you're paying, as it states here, 18 for the drain cleaner restrict, also your apprentice, and then the 18. It can get up there pretty expensive, but well worth it. Well worth it. And I say that with experience from what I have encountered in utilizing both technicians that carry these licenses, and then also from those that I've gotten to meet across the state and what they've shared with me. And this would probably be well worth conversation with your employer, with your RMP, to say, hey, would this be something that would benefit me, both by me investing my time and investing some money into these applications, into these registrations, and just have that conversation. Maybe this is a company that says, yes, we're all about these particular endorsements. We need you to have those. Or, no, we're more steered towards this type of plumbing work. We need you to work towards these types of licenses and endorsements to accompany those. A well worth conversation to have with your employer at whatever level and whatever type of plumbing work that you perform with that company. You do have your late fees as those are structured. I didn't finish to mention, so what would happen when we go from RUI and then a year after that at 4,000 hours at 2 years, what would happen to my drain cleaner restrict? Well, when I put in my application for drain cleaner and also the hour requirement along with the training requirement, then I would be upgrading. In other words, the restrict would go away, so it would be two endorsements. If I followed that in series, then it would be the RUI that would show up on my apprenticeship card along with the drain cleaner, removing the restrict. So that does save you some money. The other thing to consider, and this is one of those that we may start to look at down the road for an episode in explaining this. At 4,000 hours, what also happens in your career path is the tradesman license. You can look at sitting down and obtaining the tradesman license. That does have a training requirement. It does have the 4,000 hour, which you've just witnessed here, can be obtained. You're at that 4,000. So that's also that crossroad to look at what you're doing as an apprentice and then continuing that into that first level of a professional plumbing license, the tradesman license here in Texas. Well, I hope that this information has helped. I hope that we've gotten you some insight to what can be, as I've heard from some of my plumber's apprentice, both here in class and also those that have reached out to us. And as well as you, feel free to reach out to us, whether it be for classes, whether it be for more information, or whether it be for, hey, what about this episode? We look forward to hearing from you. So with that, we'll talk at you later. You have yourself a good one.